Welcome to Own Your Zone podcast, where we feature venture capitalists, innovators, angels, and other investors who create positive impact globally. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm JiNan Glasgow George, a patent attorney and founder of Neo IP, a law firm helping clients maximize their return on investment for patent assets. I'm also host of this show where we feature venture capitalists, innovation-focused private equity companies, and other early-stage investors. I have John Corcoran here of Rise 25. He's done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs, investors, and CEOs. Today, we flipped the script, so he'll be interviewing me. Welcome, John.
All right, Janan, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here. And in this episode, we're going to talk about your new book, The IP Miracle, How to Transform Ideas into Assets That Multiply. And this book came out in February 2022. Go check it out. It was number one in IP on Amazon, which was really exciting. And we're going to be specifically talking here about why you need a patent strategy. You are one of the rare IP attorneys out there who says, don't just file patents. You need to actually have a patent strategy. So we're going to talk about what that means exactly. And before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Neo IP, which helps companies increase their valuation and protect their business through strategic business planning and intellectual property protection. Neo IP provides corporate and legal services to help companies manage risk, develop portfolios, and monetize their IP assets. Neo IP believes intellectual property is a valuable business asset with exceptional potential, and they are here to protect that. You can learn more about Neo IP at neoipassets.com. Or if you'd like to talk more about your business needs, you can email them at admin@neoipassets.com. All right, Janan, so let's dive into this topic around, what you observed is that there are a lot of founders and entrepreneurs, and that's really who you were talking to from the book, who just kind of want to file a patent, and they don't think through the strategy piece. And that's where you start the book, is talking about the strategy. So why did you tackle that particular piece first?
Yeah, thanks so much. One of the reasons I wrote the book is that there isn't a book really for entrepreneurs and for business executives to think about how do we manage intellectual property assets. They're often the most important assets in any business, and yet they're the least understood. So I thought I really need to speak to entrepreneurs in particular, because a lot of time, energy, and money is wasted on filing patents that are worthless. Sometimes people are shocked by the number. It's pretty well quoted. About 95% of patents don't give any return on the investment. Mm-hmm. They're just not used in commerce. They don't make impact. And so, a lot of times it may be not to file that's a better decision. So that's the main motivator for getting the book out there. People understand how miraculous and how important and how valuable patents and trademarks, copyrights can be, even though most of them aren't. Strategy is the key.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating. Is the problem that the founders or business executives, that they're too close to it, or that they don't have the legal training and background to understand what's valuable, what's patentable? How is it that, that they're going about the wrong way, and they think that they should patent one thing when there may be other areas of their business where they're not thinking about it needs protection?
Yeah. You started out with the right question. Like, is this valuable? Would this be a valuable patent? So the good news is entrepreneurs and business people don't need to be patent attorneys. There are patent attorneys for that, it turns out. But patent attorneys should be asking the question of, how do you plan to use this asset in your business? Why do you want to patent it? What's the motivation? That's a good starting point. And then the other thing is, there's usually no data. There's no data to inform, is it valuable or is it even likely to become a patent? And so those are kind of the big strategic mistakes that happen at the beginning. Someone has an idea and you think, oh, I will patent this. You go to a patent lawyer and say, I would like to patent this. Lawyers are reactive, not proactive. So if you don't ask, you don't get. And so most attorneys don't tell you to do this research up front and make sure it is patentable. And if it is, would it be valuable in your business?
And you have a concise 4-step pre-filing checklist that you mentioned in the book, which I think you're already starting to get into and kind of explaining it there. But it starts with knowing how to use it is the first step. Is that right?
Exactly, because you're investing in an asset, so you should know how you're going to use it. If you were going to develop a custom piece of machinery, you would need to know what it will do to give you a return on that building of the machinery. It's kind of the same thing for a patent asset. Just like any other asset class, what will you get out of it from the beginning? And if you don't know, maybe you shouldn't file.
Then the second step is documenting it.
Right. And that's just about communication. One of the big things that can trip people up is they think they have to write the patent themselves. No. That's what your lawyer should be doing. You should be doing what only you can do, running your business. So documenting it should happen, but you don't have to write the whole patent. People get hung up at that a lot. The other thing that's important is to research it, right? This is all about context and data informing it. And that's easier than ever to do. And then finally, make sure you own it. If you're going to file it, you should own it. So those are the top 4 things to really get started.
Got it. All right. And then you've had a number of different clients that you've helped go through this process. There's a couple examples we were discussing beforehand where you've had founders come to you and say, I want to file a patent, but they hadn't really thought through those different pieces. So walk us through some of those examples.
Yeah, sure. One great example, a longtime client and now a pretty good friend of mine, Martin Rankus, who founded a company called SmartView Corporation out of Nashville. He developed a really amazing solution for wireless security surveillance. So back in the day, early 2000 era, you might remember there was wired security. You had to call someone to your house and that just had to string it up. He developed a way to quickly install and do the wireless. Now that's the standard, right? When he came to me, this was a really novel concept. He had been working on prototypes and he said, I want to file a patent, much like we just described. And so I asked him, why? What are you doing? He's going to raise capital, but he was very clear he had to file 1 patent. So when we went through the steps together and the documenting it and researching it, it actually looked like maybe he needed to file 12. Like a dozen. And he thought, whoa, that's just going to be so. I wasn't planning on that. I'm about to raise money. So I said, go back to your VC, go back to your investor and potential investors and ask them, would they rather see 1 patent or 12 strategic patents? And of course, he called me back the next day and we were off with our strategic plan.
It looks like less of a cost then and more of an investment when you place it that way.
Exactly. And that's kind of the point of the book too. These assets should multiply the value of your business. By creating them, they should give you more than just the cost to create them. If they're done well, that's a sure side effect, right?
And I know that you've said before that it's not an uncommon thing for companies to go to raise money and to approach investors and they haven't protected the underlying IP that they're seeking investment for.
Exactly. And so it's one of the first things venture capitalists will ask, of course, do you have IP? What have you done to protect your innovation, your unique value proposition that will make you have a competitive advantage in the market? And if the answer is no, or we don't know, we're thinking about it, that's a pretty good thumbs down, right?
Another client that you worked with was in the electric power grid space and was developing IP as well. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so a funny conversation as we got started. This is Joe Forbes of COSM. He had a great background as an engineer and actually worked in telecom, some of the earliest wireless and cell towers. And then he moved into starting a new company and he was very familiar with patenting and the process, but had never taken this strategic approach in this way. And when we started talking about why he thought he had something that was unique, he said, oh, the main theme, well, I'm out of telecom. What I realize is the electric power grid has a communications problem. So that really informed how we looked at this research and the documentation so that we could really position him out ahead. That has really evolved as a company, and the strategic portfolio actually grew into several companies One of them that just spun out, and he's, I think, raising capital around this time, is sort of like VisaNet, your Visa card, but for the electric power grid, that would let individuals, companies, people who want sustainable power to actually buy and sell it on the grid, just like the utilities do. So a really practical solution that came out of a very simple thought for bringing that solution. And that was solving the communications problem and then being able to get paid for it, right? Do the settlements. So it's been fun to work with him over a few years, and he's now monetizing some of that IP that we created.
Now, one other thing you wrote about in this section about strategy around patenting is to DIY or not DIY, to do it yourself. When is it a good idea for a founder or company executive to try and do it themselves? And when should they bring in someone like yourself?
Yeah, the time to DIY for intellectual property, particularly patents, is never. You do not want to DIY because you will get exactly what you pay for, right? You don't have this ability to do the research analysis and the differentiation and the building up of a robust patent specification. To not get too geeky too fast, but just to say, if you've never done it before successfully and monetize it, don't start now. Go to someone who can, a patent attorney who can work with you, and be sure that they are asking you these questions to be proactive, to get some strategy and then file. Yeah, DIY is DIE for patents. Just die.
Any final thoughts for people listening to this who are thinking they need to be more strategic in their approach?
Yeah, if you haven't had a strategy before, it's not too late. You might have a turnaround on your hands, but it may be possible to fix it, right? You don't want to find out at the worst times, in diligence when you're fundraising or in diligence when you're trying to exit. It could kill the deal. So with regard to strategy, it's not too late. Get started if you don't have one already. Thanks.
The IP Miracle, How to Transform Ideas into Assets That Multiply Your Business. You can get it on Amazon. Janan, where can people go to learn more about you, connect with you, and learn more about what you do?
Thank you. My law firm website, as we mentioned, NeoIP, it's neoipassets.com. And I have a personal website, JiNanGlasgowGeorge.com.
All right, Janan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Own Your Zone podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.